Mesdames, Messieurs, soyez les bienvenus. Nous avons l'immense plaisir aujourd'hui de recevoir notre cher ami, professeur Haïm Brichit Zabner. Le professeur Zabner, c'est un cinéaste, photographe et spécialiste des études cinématographiques. Il est professeur associé de recherche à l'Université SOAS de Londres. Mon professeur, soyez le bienvenu. Nous allons essayer de mener cette rencontre en anglais, malgré que mon anglais il est médiocre. Mais merci beaucoup d'avoir accepté notre invitation. J'ai oublié que vous êtes un militant associatif aussi engagé pour la paix entre les Arabes et les Juifs. Professeur Zabner, merci d'avoir accepté notre invitation. C'est un honneur que vous serez aujourd'hui avec nous. First of all, please excuse my modest or rather mediocre English. I would like to ask you this question. Is peace actually, is peace possible between Arab and Jews today?
Of course it is. Jews and Arabs lived in peace for 2,000 years in Spain, in the Ottoman Empire, in Southern Europe, in North Africa, in Iran, in India, with peace between Jews and Muslims and Christians and Hindus. It is all possible and very likely, but for Zionism. Zionism is making this impossible because Zionism is a settler colonial movement, and it is based on attacking Arabs, attacking Muslims, on racism, on apartheid. If Jews could live for almost 1,000 years in peace with Muslims in Spain, in Al-Andalus, why is it not possible today? If they were not occupiers, if they did not use apartheid, if they were not Zionists, of course it's possible. That is what the Palestinians are telling us.
Professor, will the rise of the extreme right in Israel help with peace between the two people today?
If I understand your question, the extreme right in Israel is not about peace. We know that. It's like the extreme right in France, like the extreme right in the United States. They are never about peace. They are never about life together. They are about the opposite. So I think we need to understand that as long as this government is in power, there will never be peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Palestinians will never have human rights. There will never be equality. There will not be an end to the occupation. There will not be an end to murders and bombing of Gaza. This will continue. This is what they are about. They don't represent Judaism. They don't represent me. They don't represent my friends. They don't represent Jews everywhere. They represent a very small group in Israel. And even you know that most Israelis don't support this government. They are in the streets demonstrating against it. So as long as they are in power, there will not be peace for anybody.
The rise of racism in Israel, how you can explain it?
Well, I wanted to speak about this as the first issue. Zionism has been emerging in the 19th century, in the late 19th century, in two places. In Russia, and the Russian Empire, which was a very anti-Semitic empire, And of course, political Zionism emerged in Austria, in Vienna, under Theodor Herzl, a right-wing liberal journalist. Now, in Russia and in France at the time, Jews were suffering from two different forms of anti-Semitism. In France, the anti-Semitism was very different. It was very strong, but limited to a small group of politicians and intellectuals, and mainly put forward by Action Française, which was an anti-Semitic right-wing organization. In Russia, the government itself was very, very racist, and saw the Jews as as people that they need to get rid of. They wanted to get rid of all the Jews, and passed legislation and regulations that were designed to get rid of the Jews by making their life impossible. It's like the Israelis now treat the Palestinians, yeah? Now, Zionism emerged as a reaction, as, if you want, a liberation movement of Jews from anti-Semitism, from anti-Semitic regimes. And the Russian regime was very anti-Semitic, and it was very anti-left, and most Jews were left-wing, were socialists, and later communists, yeah? So there was a lot of opposition from the regime to the existence of Jews, not just to what they did, but to the physical existence. So the beginning is an anti-racism movement. Zionism emerges as an anti-racism movement, but, and this is important, because it has emerged against racism, and this has happened in some other places. Imagine, you know, the people that suffered in France, or in Switzerland in the 16th century because of Lutheranism. Lutheranism was a minority in France, and Lutherans left France and went to America. In Britain, it was the opposite. Catholics suffered from the government in Britain, and so they went to America, okay? Now, when they arrived to America, these are two groups which suffered, terrible oppression, yeah, which is very similar to racism. And when they come to America, are they liberal? Are they progressive? No, they are not. They are actually decimating and killing and stealing the land of the American Indians. They behave to the people of America, the indigenous population of America, like they suffered in their countries. So this is what happened to Zionism. Zionism emerged against anti-Semitism, but the minute that they had the slightest power in Palestine, the model was Jews with no others, only Jews. This was the raison d'etre of Zionism. They didn't want non-Jewish people to live with them. And what do you do when the Jews are less than 5% of the population in Palestine in the beginning of the 20th century, and the other 95% are Arab Muslims and Christians? So it was, on the face of it, an impossible project. But so I just want to say it again. Zionism acted as a racist movement because they suffered from racism but didn't analyze it progressively. And so in order to resolve a problem against racism against Jews, they were racist against non-Jews in Palestine, and wanted, in a sense, if you want, to build a ghetto again a modern ghetto, a big ghetto of Jews without Arabs in Palestine. This was not possible. This was not justified. This was not liberal. This was not, rational. It wasn't. If not for the British Empire, it would never happen. So they built, in a sense, Zionism, the project of Zionism built a modern ghetto in Palestine and tried to get rid of all Palestinians. They got rid of 750,000 Palestinians, which is 2/3 of all Palestinians.
This tendency to ban criticism of Israel by confusing criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. How you can explain this?
Sorry, could you ask this again? I missed some of it.
This tendency to ban criticism of Israel by confusing criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism.
Okay, now I am a Jewish Marxist, but I work with Jews who are religious. I work with Christians who are religious. I work with Muslims who are religious. We are working together in a movement called Convivencia. And you would know what Convivencia is. It's a historical movement in Al-Andalus, where Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived together in harmony for almost 1,000 years. So for me, what I see is Zionism is in crisis. It never was in a crisis like it is now. The crisis of Zionism is that it has grown and matured. Do you see what I'm saying? Zionism has arrived. It is now fully developed. It wasn't fully developed 50 years ago, but now it is fully developed. And as a racist movement, as an apartheid movement, as a movement which is based on treating non-Jews as unequal, it has to use racism. It has to use racism in the legislation, in the occupation, the police, the army, the finance, the culture. All areas of Israel are racist. Now, if they allow this to be understood elsewhere, they will be under a lot of pressure. So instead of they cannot justify what they're doing. We are imperialists and colonialists because France and Britain and other countries were imperialist and colonialist. What was acceptable in the 19th century is not acceptable today. It's not acceptable today to run a colonial regime. It is not acceptable today to run an apartheid regime. It's not acceptable to say, like in South Africa it was, that Arabs and Muslims will not be citizens. It's not acceptable. So they had to stop criticism of what they are doing in France, in Germany, in the United States, in Britain, everywhere. And they found a perfect way of doing it. And the perfect way is this. We, the Jews, they say, suffered terribly in the Holocaust. So many Jews were killed by racism, So if you criticize the fact that we, the Jews, have our own land and country and state, you're anti-Semitic. And if you criticize Israel in any way, you are anti-Semitic. This is a perfect method to stop people like you and me saying that Israel is an apartheid state. Because if I say, or if you say, Israel is racist, Israel is doing illegal things, Israel commits war crimes, which it does. Of course, all those things are true. If you say this, they say, on the media, Chaim Breshit is a racist. It doesn't matter that I'm Jewish. It doesn't matter that my my whole family died in the Holocaust. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that my parents are survivors of Auschwitz. What matters is that I criticize Israel or you criticize Israel. If we criticize Israel, we're anti-Semitic. This is a perfect method of making sure that we cannot talk about Palestine, and it works. I know that in France it works very well. Anyone in France that is actually criticizing Israel is in trouble. In the UK, it is the same. In the US, it is now the same. In Canada, in Germany. In Germany, it's even worse. Yeah, no one in Germany is allowed to say anything against Israel. So this is why they are using the tool of anti-Semitism. Am I anti-Semitic? Are you anti-Semitic? You know, this is mad. But it is accepted by the West because Israel is an animal of the West in the Middle East. It is serving the interest of the West, of the UK, of the US, of course, France, Germany. And that's why it is getting more money and more political support than any other country. Until the war in Ukraine, Israel got from the United States more money than the rest of the world together. It's a small country. It's a rich country. Why do they give them so much money? They don't need it. They give them money because they are providing a service. So those countries understood that what Israel wants them to do is to pass legislation that will make it impossible to you in France to come and say, I criticize Israel because it's a racist apartheid state, it's a settler colonial project, it is making people unequal, it is killing Palestinian children, women, men, old men every day. You know, we know that. If you say that, you're anti-Semitic. So what better method is there to shut us up, basically? And it works.
How do you explain that normalization between several Arab countries, and Israel has not improved the situation between Arab and Jews, and has not led to peace?
Well, the regimes that are now that signed an agreement with Israel, I wouldn't call this peace, but there is what they call the Abraham Accords, and also the peace agreements between Egypt and Jordan and Israel have not actually delivered any real peace. For example, Israelis and Egyptians don't go to each other's countries. Yeah. What did it deliver? It delivered agreements between regimes which are not democratic. The regime in Egypt is not a democratic regime. The regime in Saudi Arabia is not a democratic regime. And the regime in Israel is not democratic because any regime which is limiting democracy to Jews and excluding Palestinians is not democratic. If there was a democracy between the river and the sea, between the river Jordan and the sea, imagine there is tomorrow a decision to have one democratic state between the river and the sea. Palestinians are already 51% of the people living between the river and the sea. Or, in other words, in Palestine, because this is the name of the country. The country is called Palestine. It was never called Israel. Israel is a state, it's not a country. So of the people living there, 51% are Palestinian Arabs. So any democracy would be actually with a majority of Muslims and Christians as opposed to Jews. So Israel has never been a democracy and cannot be a democracy unless Zionism is negated and finished. It won't happen otherwise. The agreements were signed between regimes, which actually, you know, what happened in Egypt in 2011. You know, the regime in Egypt is the regime that crushed the Egyptian people's uprising. The Intifada in 2011 in the whole Islamic world was crushed by undemocratic regimes, for me anyway. So Saudi Arabia was never even saying that it's a democratic country, and the other Gulf states are not democracies. There are democracies in the Arab world, Tunisia, for example, but those regimes are all allied to the United States. The United States is basically ruling the Middle East, and unfortunately, Europe is helping them. The EU is helping them to control the Middle East. What does it mean to control the Middle East? To control Muslims, to make sure that Muslims do what the West wants them to do. And the West wants them to have an agreement with Israel because this is what they need. The West wants Saudi Arabia to be fighting Iran. Now, there is an agreement that the Chinese have brought about between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The Americans really are very, very surprised, but also very nasty about it. They don't want peace in the Middle East. They never wanted peace in the Middle East. So those agreements are basically against Iran, against China, against Russia, against the Arabs. You know, that's what the agreements are, to give the power without the possibility of change towards democracy in the Middle East, the power to the Ibn Saud, the power to al-Sisi, the power to the King of Jordan, the power to the King of Morocco. Yeah. So this is nothing to do with democracy or with peace. This is American. You know, why do they do it? Imagine together the Middle East buys the biggest part of arms from America. America, like Israel, is a democracy of production of armaments, of destruction, of tanks, of you know, drones, of, you know, every way to kill is dealt with by the Americans, and they sell enormous amounts of, you know, destruction.
My next question: some people believe that the Americans are responsible for this serious situation between Arab and Jews, and they hope that the end of American reign over the world order can help to find peace.
I don't think that this is a good point. I'll tell you why. It is not the Americans that are responsible for the lack of peace between Israel and the Arabs. It's the Israelis. The Israelis are responsible. The Americans are supporting Israel in its aims. It's not the Americans that invented the Nakba. They didn't do the Nakba. The Nakba was done by the Israelis. So I think by blaming the Americans in this way that you described, you remove the responsibility from the Israelis. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't remove the responsibility for the war crimes from the Israeli government and the Israeli state. If you said the Americans are making this possible, are financing it, are supporting it diplomatically, are supporting it by vetoes in the UN, are supporting it by armaments, are supporting it by making their version of arrangement enforced in the Middle East. Yes, all this is true. But the people who are actually killing Palestinians every day, the people that got most of the Palestinians out of Palestine, the people that don't allow equality in Palestine are the Israelis. And we should not, and you know, France is also responsible. Let me remind, you know, the audience that France has helped Israel illegally and secretly to develop nuclear weapons. Israel is illegally holding nuclear weapons. It does not allow anyone like the atomic energy bodies to visit and to look at it. It's demanding that Iran doesn't develop nuclear weapons when it itself is the only country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons. So France has made this possible. The UK also helped France in making this crime possible. So yes, the West is making a lot of things possible for Israel to do, which are not legal, but it's not the West that is killing the Palestinians. It is the Israelis. I cannot hear you.
Yeah. Don't you also think that the Palestinians, with their situation of division, lack of democracy, behind the sense of the Palestinians' authority and corruption, are responsible for this situation?
No, I don't think so. It's like saying that blacks in the United States, because they are divided, because they don't agree, they don't have one leader or one leadership, are responsible for racism. No, I don't accept it. It's like saying that Muslims in France are responsible for racism against Muslims. Muslims are not responsible for Islamophobia, and the Palestinians are not responsible for what the Israelis are doing. Now, if you ask why isn't there a progressive democratic leadership in Palestine? Well, that's easy to see. This is done by the Israelis and the Americans and the undemocratic Arab regimes working together to make sure that the non-democratic forces in Palestine are the ones that hold power. And Europe is also responsible. Europe is supporting Abbas and is actually in the only elections that were free in 2006 in Palestine, Hamas won the election. Yeah, we know that. I'm saying this, I'm not saying that all Palestinians should support Hamas, but all my Palestinian friends, who are, some of them are not even Muslims, they are Christians. They're supporting Hamas because it is less corrupt, not because they want a Muslim state. It is less corrupt than the government in Ramallah. And the government in Ramallah is corrupt because it is a government by Israel. It is basically just 17 police forces and security organizations which are not securing the safety of Palestinians, but of Israelis. They allow the occupation to continue. This is their function. So the Palestinians didn't vote for this government, you know? How can we actually come to the Palestinians and say, you are responsible for your suffering? They didn't vote for this government. They voted for another government, which the West had not allowed to happen. The Egyptians didn't vote for Sisi, and nobody voted for the government of Saudi Arabia. No one voted for the government of, you know, for the king of Morocco, yeah, or for the king of Jordan. They vote for the parliament, but they don't actually select the leadership. So we cannot actually blame this on the Palestinian man that lives in Jericho, or the woman who lives in Ramallah, and they cannot cross and they cannot see each other. They might be married to each other. They cannot actually live with one another. There are about 5 to 6 million Palestinians outside of Palestine. Are they responsible for the crime against their people? Of course not. They can't even come and visit Palestine. You know, people outside of Palestine are not allowed to visit Palestine. Who is responsible? It's the Israelis. It's very simple. I don't see a problem here.
Are you optimistic for peace between the two peoples, and how we can make this peace?
This is the most important question, as you know. I'm not an optimistic person, but if you are a political activist, you have to use hope, and you have to find where the hope can live and exist and grow. Otherwise, what is the point of political activity? What is the point of trying to liberate people if you don't believe that it's possible? Now, I want to say to you something very simple. You are much younger than me, but you will remember 1989 when the Soviet Union disappeared. All of a sudden, in that summer, overnight, and nobody foresaw it. Not the security services of the West, not the CIA, not the second office in Paris or the MI5 in London. Nobody knew that this is going to happen. So sometime in history, things happen in a way that is not foreseen, in a surprising way, in a way that everyone thinks is not possible. If you came and told me 3 months before the end of communism in 1989, in 3 months, this will be the end of communism, I will think that you need help, you know. Where did you get this idea from, yeah? And if I told it to you, you will also think that I am mad. Why are you saying this? So first of all, hope comes from the fact that people move in mysterious ways, okay, in ways which we cannot calculate. And that's what happened in 2011 in the Middle East. Arabs that everyone said are not democratic proved that they are more democratic than people in the West. That they said to the different governments, you are not running Egypt or Tunisia or, you know, other countries. You're not running it for us. You are corrupt. We don't want you. They got rid of quite a lot of those leaders, put them in jail, put them before judges in Egypt, etc., and started a movement for democracy. Who knew that this will happen? Did you know that it will happen? Did I know that it will happen? I had my hopes, but I didn't know that it will happen in 2011. So that's the first, you know, place where I look for hope. I look for hope in the democratic feelings, which are very strong in the Arab East. And those democratic feelings are supporting Palestine. Always are supporting Palestine. Always did, yeah? It is the regimes that didn't support Palestine. It is the regimes that sign agreements with Israel. It is the regimes that serve the West and are very corrupt. But the people of the Arab East, Muslims and Christians and Jews also, were never corrupt. You know, in Palestine, Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived together in peace for 2,000 years. What better proof do you have that peace is possible? Peace was always possible in Palestine because it was there. There was no anti-Semitism. There was no Islamophobia in Palestine. There never was. There wasn't a Holocaust in the Arab world, yeah? There was not organizing anti-Semitism. So people, I had religious education as a child, and I know that it is, for those three religions, the same God. And that the believers believe in the same God. And actually, Islam is related to Judaism and Christianity in the Quran, yeah? So, and the same, of course, true. Christians forget sometimes that Jesus was a Jew. He died a Jew. He wasn't a Christian, you know? So basically what we are saying is, as long as you leave Jews, Christians, and Muslims alone, they would live in peace, because there is a very long history. It's the longest history of peace between the three groups on this planet. 2,000 years of living together. Now, I have another place where I get my hope. Israel is now at a moment of crisis like never before. And I see this not as the beginning of the end of Zionism, but as the end of the beginning of Zionism, okay? This Zionism is now matured. It is a fully matured, racist apartheid system. And as such, people abroad looking at it are shocked. Now, you know, in Britain has supported Israel, has supported Zionism since 1917, okay? This is more than 100 years of support for Zionism. If you ask Britain, if you ask people in Britain, do you support the rights of the Palestinians? 70 to 80% would say yes. Why? Because it's simple. You know, why do I support the rights of British people for democracy or French people for democracy? Why do I support the rights of Muslims in Britain and in France and not in Palestine? What is, what is the reason that in Palestine, the real Palestinians, the people who own the land, have no rights? What kind of rational reason can be given? So the people, I think, I don't know about France, the people of Britain will support the rights of the Palestinians. And the rights of the Palestinians are living in peace in their own land with self-determination, with cultural autonomy, with Arabic being an equal language with Hebrew. The Palestinians don't want the Jews to leave Palestine. Now, it would be a good thing if some of the racists would leave, yeah, because they don't want to live in peace, and I'm supporting that. But people that want to live in peace should stay in Palestine. So now that the crisis, imagine this, half of the population, not half, 66% of the population of Israel says that the Israel is not a democracy, that Netanyahu is a dictator. They have been every week since the 1st of January, they've been into the streets, you've seen it, yeah? They are saying that the majority of Israelis are saying, this is not a democracy, we want to live in a democracy. What they are not saying yet is, in a democracy, we don't want a Jewish democracy, we want a democracy for all. They don't say that. But it's easier to get now to that understanding, now that they understand that they don't live in a democracy. So the first stage has already happened. It's the stage to admit that they don't live in a democracy, and it is getting less democratic all the time. And now it's not even a democracy for Jews. This is an important stage. And now every 20% of the demonstrations are now of Jews and Palestinians together. This is not reported in Britain and probably not in France, I don't know. But this is a fact. 20% of the demonstrators are Jews and Palestinians that say, we want to live together in a democracy. This has never happened before. Now, you are acting in Paris or in Switzerland, or both, I understand. I'm acting in London. Many people are acting now on the understanding that one democracy between the river and the sea is the best solution because it allows everyone to stay there, not the racists, not the people that don't believe in democracy. They have no place there. So I think they should leave because they don't accept it. But now more and more people understand in Europe, do you know, in the United States, young Jews do not support Zionism. For the first time, most young Jews, about 80%, are not supportive of Zionism. This is also true here, but the percentage is lower. That means that we are now at a stage that we haven't been before. So I'm hopeful because there are changes of the nature that happened in the Arab world, of the nature that happened in the Soviet Union. And those changes can, not must, we can't say that definitely this will happen. But if we support it in Europe, if we support it in France, in Italy, in Spain, in the UK, everywhere, and of course the United States, if we support a democracy for everyone in Palestine, like there was before Zionism, you know, under the Ottoman Empire, which supposedly was decrepit and old-fashioned, under the Ottoman Empire was peace for all in the Middle East, was much better than what the West has done. Yeah, so I think we have enough models in history: the Ottoman Empire, the Balkan, the North Africa, and the Middle East, and of course Al-Andalus, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived together. Now, Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived together in Palestine because this was the place where all these religions came from, the source. It's important for all of us. It's sacred. And I think that is a place for hope. Despite the fact that I'm not religious, I work with religious people because they understand this argument better than me. And that's the first argument that Muslims, Christians, and Jews make. We live together for over 1,000 years, and we can do it, and we want to do it.
Your final word for Joyce and Arabs, especially young people.
I think that young people everywhere has shown us, and I'm saying this, I'm almost 80, so, you know, I'm very moved and I'm very happy to see young people acting for peace, because my real worry is for the planet, for the environment. And of course, what Israel is doing for the last 75 years is also against the environment. It is destroying the life and is destroying the future life, yeah, because that's what war does. What Israel is built on is armaments, is destruction, is the denial of rights. Young people don't believe in that. The internet has made the whole planet open to everyone. People speak to people in other countries, in other languages. You know, there's never been such a world where the boundaries are not important. Yeah, that people work across boundaries. So young people don't have to be told that because they know it better than all of us. And I think that young people don't understand why we, the older people, have created a situation which is so negative. You're not as old as I am, but you know what I'm saying, that basically we are acting against young people by having wars, by having inequality, by destroying the planet that they need to live in, that their children need to live in.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we have a difficult time explaining this to young people. Young people are explaining this to us. Greta Thunberg and her friends are the future. So I think if only young people can have more power, more influence, I think we are in good hands. I don't think they are in good hands at the moment because we are not looking after the planet, we are not looking after peace, not looking after ending wars. What is this war that the United States has pushed for in Ukraine? Is this good for young or old or anyone? You know, what is this for? And of course it is for selling a lot of arms, you know. It's Israel, the United States, the UK, everyone is selling arms. They are not selling, they're giving it, yeah. But of course they're selling because these are, it doesn't matter who pays them. They are selling. They're selling to the government that gives it to the Ukrainians. It doesn't matter. So this is a world which is not helping the young people to learn, to live, to love, to respect each other. And that's what they want to do. So I don't think that I'm worried about the future if old people are running it, if, you know, if the West is continuing in these ways, which are really unfriendly towards anyone. If we are talking to young people, what I find is that they say, why does this have to continue? They don't want it to continue. And they're right.
My friend, Professor Zabner, thank you so much. And we must continue to pray for peace between Arabs and Jews. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace.
Salam alaikum.
Goodbye. Au revoir.
Shukran.
Shukran.
Thank you. Is the recording going to be placed somewhere?
Yeah.
So please send me a link when the recording is there.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks a lot. See you.
See you.